Welcome back. This is another episode of The Online Hustle. Today we've got Patrick O'Neill. He's a senior brand manager and business development executive at Zesty Paws. Pat, give us a wave.
How you doing, guys? Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on as well. Before we really get into it, just give us a bit of a rundown of what your experience is and who you are, and then we'll just let it flow from there. Over to you.
Yeah, so I've been an Amazon seller since about 2017. I was actually selling on Amazon in high school, doing retail arbitrage. So I was the guy going from wholesaler to wholesaler and picking up as much as I could. When like Toys R Us went out of business, I had about 6 or 7 shopping carts. Hired some of the cashiers to help me out, and had a SUV just packed to the absolute rim with toys. So feel like I was living my childhood dream, but as many people know, the retail arbitrage side of the business isn't very scalable. Not unless you have a very good relationship with someone that can get you wholesale products, and even then, you're eventually going to run out of inventory. That's the challenge. There is you're always looking for more inventory. So I transitioned. I knew that wasn't super sustainable, so we sold that account. I worked for an angel investor. Learned it in about a day in Chicago, ran that for a couple of years, and then transitioned into really building brands myself rather than just kind of jumping on someone else's brand. So what I did is got a job at an aggregator called Grove, and that's where I learned kind of the ins and the outs of the business. This was back in like 2019, 2020. So this is, when Amazon was ripe with hacks and tactics and everything like that. So I definitely learned, the black hat, gray hat, white hat, everything in between there. But I joined that aggregator at a time when it was very, still very small, and I was there while it grew to, over $1 billion. I was also there when it, started to shrink as well, when inefficiencies of scaling are made. So, I was witness to a lot of good decisions, a lot of bad decisions, but either way, I felt as if my growth trajectory there wasn't really working. So I actually started using the skills they taught me and treating my LinkedIn like a product. And who's my customer is someone that wants to start a brand and hire me and help me grow it. So that ended up working. Got a job out in California and built a brand from scratch in the supplement space in about 2023. So this was right when it was super saturated. We launched a turmeric supplement. We actually ended up being top 10 within the first year profitably for the turmeric category, which, was something I was really proud of, really happy with. But, sometimes, the most important thing is who you're working with and who your partners are. And my partner at the time was a real estate guy. He was using, e-com wasn't his main source of income by any means. So he was typically taking money out of the e-com account, paying for other brands and stuff like that, which, first rule on Amazon, don't stock out. Second rule on Amazon, don't stock out. So we stocked out dozens of times, and it was time for me to make a change again. I can have my baby keep being destroyed, and that's what these brands are to me, is my baby. So I ended up taking a job at Zesty Paws to manage one of the biggest brands that I could get my hands on, and I've been doing that for about 2 years, and been seeing really, really strong growth and really positive stuff out of it, man.
Good. Nice to hear as well. And it's good to get an understanding of sort of where you came from and why you eventually ended up in the place where you are now. But Zesty Paws is probably the one that everybody's heard of, right? Especially in this space. So let's start at the beginning with that. What was the thing that got you through the doors at Zesty Paws? What was the first thing that when you first came across them, what was it that caught your attention about them? What opportunities did you see in that? And was there like an aha moment that made you think, oh, there's something that's missing here that I can definitely capitalize on?
For sure. Yeah. So, I had known about Zesty Paws. I've competed against Zesty Paws in the past with other dog supplement brands. I knew it really stood out as the category dominator. So, what Zesty Paws did is they were, basically first to the space, but also executed very well. Back then, dog supplements was very medicinal. It was very gray and white and very sterile. what people realize is that treats are what sell, and they have to be fun, and the dog has to really enjoy them. And nobody likes damaging the relationship between them and their dogs with a medicine, having to shove it down their throat or anything like that. That my dog personally hates swallowing tablets, so I either have to stick it in a hot dog or kind of just get it down there. So I definitely saw its potential, and it's grown so much. It was acquired for $660 million. What really drew me was I actually had a very close friend of mine, Jack Custer, work at the umbrella company behind it, H&H Group. And one of my core philosophies in the Amazon industry, or in industry as a whole, is just make as many allies as you possibly can, and keep your friends very close. And that's really the credit to is why I'm in this position now, is just referral from someone who I actually ended up bringing to the industry. I actually gave him a job at the aggregator a few years ago, and ever since then we kind of just piggyback or bounce off of each other, trade ideas, but also trade opportunities and options like that. So looking at Zesty Paws, I knew it had a lot of potential. It's got a lot of creative optimization potential. It's a really, really big team. It was acquired by a company, so luckily I come from the experience where I've seen these companies scale, and I've seen the wrong decisions be made because you have a board of directors that you need to impress and you need to keep happy. So I can try to mitigate that as much as I can and keep that relationship healthy.
Yeah, I get it. And how does, because you mentioned earlier on in the answer to that question that you worked competing against them previously. So how does it then feel to start working for a competitor and then switch sides? Like you were Darth Vader and now you've gone Luke Skywalker. You've gone, which way have you gone? Have you gone to the dark side or have you gone to the light side? Or how have you implemented, now that you've seen behind the curtain and you've been a competitor, and then you bring that knowledge into the brand that you're with now, what opportunity, were there any opportunities that you saw whilst competing against them that you've now implemented to say, right, these are some of the ways that people look at your brand from an outsider's perspective. Here's how you can implement that to your advantage to make a better product that's more visible, that gets more sales.
For sure. I really believe that there isn't a lot of the competition is with Amazon directly. Light side, dark side. I've always, been willing to share tactics and Amazon hacks with competitors, because at the end of the day, all those tactics and tags, they don't work like they used to. So it's really more about developing a strong brand messaging, developing a really strong product, and just nurturing your customers and listening to your customers and making changes based off that feedback. So I will say though that making the change, it was definitely very very positive. I went from a brand that was struggling to grow, and it was growing, but not quite at where we had liked it, or not as Zesty Paws levels and stuff like that. But both opportunities allowed me to test a lot of things, and one of the things that I learned from growth early on in the aggregator is that emotional connection drives more conversion than all the SEO that you could possibly do. So when I joined Zesty, I knew that one, that was an opportunity for them, but two, they had the team, the resources, and the ability to be able to execute on building that emotional connection and actually changing the listings from a fundamental standpoint, taking a look back of how they're built and saying, thinking what is actually going to make a customer purchase this, focusing on that first, and then loading up with the typical Amazon hacks SEO, using the tools and softwares to make your listing stand out as much as you can.
And what do you think are the things that make Zesty Paws stand out the most?
Yeah, so when they launched, like I said, it was very medicinal. So what do? They went with the brightest color orange they possibly could. So they won't stand out.
That'll do it.
What's that?
That'll do it. That's really going to stand out on that white background. If that's the buy box that you've got, something that's orange is definitely going to pop.
It seems silly. It seems like a small decision, but that does make it large impact. because of Zesty Paws and because of other brands like it, there's actually, I see LinkedIn posts all the time about, saying, should I just make my products orange? So I definitely don't think orange is the secret sauce. I think, it just helps stand out in that particular category. I've seen cleaning supplies do the same thing. It's a very kind of red, blue, white area. So somebody launched a bottle with completely orange, and they've been doing really, really well. So, there is something to be said about drawing that initial attention because, Amazon is becoming more and more like the retail shelf, and you have to pay for shelf space. There's so many people standing next to you that, I've done hacks of using AI with main images, putting like the ingredients in main images, doing all that fun hacks and stuff like that, trying to sneak a badge in or USA made or retail tag on it, something like that. The most powerful thing you can do is really from a branding standpoint, though. And like you said, create a lot of contrast from that white background and make sure that, you're fitting within your category niche, but still standing out.
And I suppose I don't just want it to focus on just the colors and, the design of what the product looks like, but I suppose more about brand story. Again, what from that side do you think makes Zesty Paws stand out compared to other products that are currently on the market?
Yeah, making supplements fun, making them functional, and trying to personalize the customer journey as much as possible. So, even still in the category today, there are, basically two schools of thought. It's either take the fun route or take the science and medical route. So what Zesty Paws tries to do is bridge that gap. One, by listening to customers as much as we can, basically formulating our listings and products based off the previous feedback that we've heard. But also, having a very, well-developed team of product engineers to develop these new products that actually are very high efficacious and one and two that what the dogs will like. So, we basically focus on three main pillars. It's palatability, it's efficacy, how well the product actually works, and then safety is front and foremost because you're trusting a company to give something to your dog. You have to make sure that you're not hurting anyone and you're applying to a very large audience because there's so many different types of dogs out there. There's so many different types of people out there. Just like every supplement you have says consult your physician, stuff like that. That's just one thing that you want to take extra care for because some on Amazon with how many products there are, how many products are coming from China, a lot of people don't always know what they're buying. So really to break that curve, you have to do the extra work and not only build that extra efficacy in your product, but then communicate that you built it to your consumers and have some sort of way for them to reach out to you, answer any question and everything like that, which you can only really afford to do if you're a pretty large business at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where, often people look at their pets as though they are an additional member of the family as well. So being able to hit some of the pain points that the customer has whilst also making sure that their pet, their baby is well and in the best health possible. It's probably a hard balance to find. And, you've got to then balance what you're talking about with efficacy. So you've got hard data that is behind the choices of the products that you make. But then also there's the heart component of trying to sell to the customer themselves who actually has the money, who you want to extract that money from them. So how do you sort of balance that hard data versus heart, and how do you weave that into everyday brand decisions?
Yeah, I mean, the most powerful route I'd say is to leverage UGC, customer testimonials. They're really going to test or they're really going to trust the customer over the seller at any given point. You want to make sure you have a lot of it because it's so manufactured nowadays. It's really easy to get UGC videos. It's really hard to get super fan people that actually think of how this made their day better rather than kind of reading a list of talking points. So I find it best, in terms of a tactical sense, to find your super fans, segment out, your top buyers, people who buy your most expensive products and also who buy extremely frequently. If you can, reach out and contact those buyers, not only are they going to love the fact that you're reaching out and that you're, giving them some free product in exchange for a video or anything like that, but they're the only ones that are going to actually think about what's really going to sell this product because they know what made the impact for them. I could go on Fiverr, I could go on, Join Brands or whatever, and I could get some UGC pretty quickly, but it's either going to be talking points that we created or it's going to be, just a a low effort, hey, this is my dog, this is the product, this is what it does, and a story, but not really truly how it's impacting their daily lives and their dogs, just emotions and how it's acting and everything like that. So it's really just communicating with your customer base as much as possible and understanding their insights and doing as many polls as you possibly can.
So UGC, I presume, for the uninitiated like myself, user-generated content, right? Right. Okay. Let's jargon lost as well along the way. And you mentioned saying user-generated content. So what's the plan of action with that? Do you so you reach out to people, you say, hey, hope you're enjoying the product. Do you mind leaving us a quick review? Do you mind doing a TikTok video? Or how is that from I know you're yourself not doing the marketing behind it, but what's the rundown of that? How do you approach it? How do you pick out somebody who you do want to target?
Yeah, I believe that every initiative has to be tasked on correctly on a fundamental basis first. So, fundamentally what I would want is a super fan to talk about the brand. So rather than trying to, if I just wanted UGC, like I said, I could go to one of those platforms. I could go on TikTok. I could just start reaching out to people and DMing people randomly who own a dog, who I've seen own a dog. But if you really segment your customer list, you find a way to get in contact. Let's say you take your D2C list and, the people that respond to most emails are people who have purchased the most in the last, 30 days, who have purchased, multiple products. You want to try and find someone that is solving multiple use cases with your brand, because when they sell the product, they're going to be probably selling their main product, but they're also going to link, hey, I also buy this because it helps me out. And when you combine them all and pull a kit out of it, it really, really helps out. So it's really just, changing your mind about how you would go to find it. It's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more time consuming. You have to take the long route initially. But once you've developed that relationship, let's say a few months later, a tentpole is coming. Now you already have that relationship. Just go back to that chat, message that person, and develop those. I really, in terms of UGC, really believe in quality over quantity to a certain regard. There are like Mary Roots. I see them pumping out like 9,000 samples or something like that a month of product to give away. We're not quite going as spread out as approach, but I think we're being a little bit more tactical about the people that we do bring onto the brand.
Yeah. The thing is as well, it's not genuine at that point, is it? Whereas the way that you're going about it, if you're just reaching out organically to people who are already on your database, who have recently bought products from you, and as you say, if they're a repeat buyer, then they've come back of their own volition. They clearly enjoy the product, they clearly buy into the marketing, they buy into the brand. You're going to get more authentic, more genuine content from somebody like that, rather than, like you said, just blasting out DMs on TikTok or Instagram and trying to get somebody like a micro influencer to do a reel about it. Which, with things like that, I feel as though they can be high return over a short period of time. But if you have more authentic content, it's more of a slow burn, but it will be more natural and more consistent, I feel.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You definitely don't want to use it as an excuse to not to drive out as much as you can. But just the power of, and you can run polls on it. You can run a poll from someone who makes you TikTok versus, one of your super fans, and ask, 200 people what they think, which video makes more of an emotional impact to them. And, I guarantee you they're going to say the person who loves the brand, who bought the product on their own volition. Because most of the time you're just sending samples out randomly, and, you might get lucky once or twice just because there's, such a high amount of them. But, it's another thing that's not super sustainable. You can't go forever at that speed, you really, unless you're developing these relationships along the way.
Yeah, I get it. Now, another thing that comes to mind is I myself don't have a pet, right? So I can't look at it from a pet perspective. But if I'm buying supplements for myself, like be that creatine or L-theanine or whatever other one you want to throw in the conversation here, it's a bit of a gray market in general, at least from a human supplement side of things, where you don't really know what you're going to get in it. You don't know how effective that supplement actually is. You've got all these bulking agents in the pills and things like that as well. So how do you keep consumer trust in a space where health claims can get, pretty fuzzy, to say the least?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, and I've dealt with this problem, in depth, because I've been in supplements my entire career, human supplements originally, and now dog supplements. But that's a problem I run into a lot. I've seen brands fall apart from it, and really, what the problem is Amazon really needs to have a higher standard for the products that they let in, a higher barrier to entry for products that they allow onto the market. So a good example of this, like you said, creatine. So creatine gummies was, a market that kind of went from 0 to 100 really, really quick. It blew up, but it blew up with a lot of fake competitors, a lot of products that didn't have what they were saying they had in it. Now Foods and I think Now Foods and maybe Whole Foods teamed up to do a study of the creatine gummies on Amazon, and they found like 95% of them all had, they're claiming a gram of creatine, so 1,000 milligrams, and really they'd have 5 milligrams in them after being tested.
No.
So that's 0.05% of what you purchased. So, and I actually launched a creatine gummy back then, and so I'm competing against people who are listed for $10 from China while I'm $40 because
it wasn't yours they audited, was it?
What's that?
It wasn't yours that they audited, was it?
No. Well, it was part of the audit. Yeah, they audited my formula, but my formula was, so everyone is saying, we have a gram or we have even 1.5. They had milligrams. I said I have a gram. I actually had 1.26 because what you're supposed to do in the supplement manufacturing industry is always have a little bit of overage just in case, so that the customer is actually getting what they're buying. So that was a really hard thing to deal with because it's really no way to stand out from that crowd besides being the loudest and spending the most with the marketing. Because there's a few things that builds trust. If a customer sees a brand spending a lot, seeing the same ad over and over again, high production value, different formats of the ad, they're going to trust that brand a little bit more because they at least know that, hey, this brand is legit because they've spent a lot of money on all these different models, on all these different cameras, on these different formats and everything. So you kind of build some trust just by having a lot of assets and a lot of different spend channels. But another way too is also, be very transparent with the consumer even from a manufacturing standpoint. Like there's actually a brand that does a really good example of it called Earth Rated on Amazon. They do dog shampoo and stuff, and they also do like poop bags to throw away. So on their storefront, they have videos of their manufacturing line of the product going through a domestic manufacturing line. So I think right there that builds trust with the consumer because they can see
straight
their own people working on the product.
Yeah, I mean, perfect. I mean, if you've got that brand story, which is literally the production line, in the back of people's minds as well, they're thinking, all right, well, I can see where it's made. I can see that there's people who are actually making this. Maybe they look like me. Yeah, I want to support that because I also want to support local jobs and things like that as well. So you're sort of playing on an emotional aspect of the buying process as well, because you're taking away that veil of, hey, we're a company, to, hey, there's people behind this company who are actually creating these products for you. So it's, I get it. There's a bit of like a person-to-person, like connected relationship, I guess, there.
Yeah, like you said, they, if it supports American jobs, I mean, a lot of people like, Black Rifle Coffee, that's basically their whole brand messaging, and they're a huge brand, and, they're built off the fundamental aspect of we're transparent with who we are as a business and why we're doing what we're doing, and that resonates with consumers. So, they built that trust, whereas like, China is just using like iStock plus render plus copy that hits every claim that isn't, that they should be sued for, but you can't really prosecute the China brand. You can't really go after them just by them making claims that their product is better than yours, even if it's really not.
Yeah, I keep going back to this, but somebody told me once when I was talking about international expansion with them, they said the US innovates, the EU regulates, and then China imitates. And it just sticks with me because those tropes seem to be coming up time and time again And the more I think about that, the more I notice it in every day, right? And just as I said, even for the marketing behind the product now as well.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, I've talked to sellers that want to launch, hard good inventions of theirs, something that they've designed, they've gotten a patent on, and they'll send to production. The problem is they can either produce it domestically, but with a hard good, there's a lot of tooling involved. It's really something that the U.S. isn't built for, just kind of custom building stuff whenever at scale very quickly, whereas China really is. So like you'll have people that will have a really good idea for a product, but the second they list that thing or they send it to China to manufacture, they've got it now, and they're gonna make it for themselves cheaper, and they don't care what letters you send them. They're gonna sell it right next to you. There's nothing you can do to stop them. So it's like, do you hide it as long as you can and spend more on manufacturing in the US just so they don't have it? Because the second they build the tooling, they're not building any tooling unless they're also manufacturing that product for themselves. It just makes more sense to them. Hey, you already paid for everything to set this up, so let's just build it ourselves.
Yeah, but even with that, I mean, if somebody does come up with a new hard good and then it does really well and it is US made, and maybe you've got all the patent laws and all the IP necessary to make sure that it isn't imitated. All it takes then is somebody to get that product, if they see that it is doing really well, and then take it to China. And then you're in the same issue again, because you can go to any factory over there, you go to Canton Fair or whatever it might be, and you can just get them to back engineer that whole thing and start from scratch. And then, you've spent all that money on US production, but then you've still ended up with the same outcome in the end anyways.
There's a cheaper version of it. Yeah. Yeah. So the patents will only protect you in the US, and there's also ways to squeak around them by changing the design and format and stuff like that. So yeah, I totally agree. You could also kind of get screwed by a US seller going to China then manufacturing themselves. So yeah, it's a competitive space, man. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. You got to be quick. Quick execution is of the utmost, and being willing to take risks. That's what I've learned for real.
Yeah, man, 100%. In terms of what Zesty Paws is doing right now, I know we've talked a lot about Amazon, but do you see opportunities across other platforms as well? Some of the other guys that we've had on podcast in previous episodes have been been really bullish on TikTok Shop, for example. Other people more so on Walmart Marketplace. So just want to get your thoughts and see what you think outside of Amazon is the place where people should be spending the most amount of money right now.
Yeah, so answering the spend question is tricky because it depends on where your audience lives, what your niche is. But in terms of TikTok Shop, I mean, yeah, it's another animal. It's just something that has a lot of benefits. You can sell directly on TikTok Shop. They have pretty strong margins. TikTok can take care of your shipping, or you can have it filled by Amazon. So, there's no reason really not to list on there. In terms of, there's different schools of thought on how many samples to give and how many, whether to set an open plan and give a commission out and everything like that. But I will say the biggest thing I've noticed from, everything is a brand halo. You have to look at your business as it's one big team. So, whether you're focused on Amazon or wherever it is, you have to line up your channels, make sure that, your messaging is very consistent. Your images are very consistent, because customers don't like when they go to one page and they end up on another landing page. And let's say the main image looks different. They're going to be turned off by that. They're going to immediately think that they might have been taken to a scam listing or something that was wrong. But what I've noticed from TikTok is the effects that it has on Amazon are huge. I mean, you can run plenty of money on TikTok Shop. I've set open plans where I didn't even really communicate with people, and you can make 30 grand a week just by people responding to your open plans without you even reaching out. Then you start reaching out, offering samples, that increases that a lot. But really what happens is once these people start making commission sales and it influences more affiliates to start making more videos, is most of the people end up buying on Amazon. It's probably a statistic that's changing very fast and lowering. But at the last pattern event I was at, they were estimating about 70% of people who see a video on TikTok don't buy it on TikTok, they buy it on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
And we can see that clear as day on Zesty Paws with our branded search volume. So we started with salmon oil on Amazon or on TikTok Shop, and we're pumping out videos, and we just noticed a very steady line and straight increase on our branded search. And when someone's searching salmon oil for dogs, like I said, it's a retail shelf. There's a million things there, but if they search Zesty Paws salmon oil for dogs, they're going to get every version that we sell, probably some other stuff that is just ranked well that has the Zesty Paws in it. And then, they're starting their journey with us already in mind. So we're not having to compete as much. So I think right now that's the biggest lever that I've seen in terms of like growing very quickly and scaling a product to maybe a new ceiling. Because we were already the best seller for salmon oil, but every time I do like demand planning with my demand team, it's like, how are these levels still going up? How are these, month over month? I'm like, I thought it would go down eventually. But that's huge. Is right now what's happening is all the major brands are developing the demand outside of Amazon, bringing it to Amazon. And this is what's giving them, their advantage. Whereas like Amazon to the traditional seller was always, that's where the demand is, just do SEO and capture the demand with a high converting listing, just be there and be seen. Now we're seeing like probiotics for dogs, like is starting to be as equal of a keyword as like Pet Lab probiotics for dogs or Zesty Paws probiotics for dogs. Each brand typically has their one category that's where they spend most of their money at, and just build the most of their assets. So, we're not really fighting for the general search term anymore, because we're fighting to increase our branded search above the general search term, which is kind of crazy to think about, because back in the day, the broad search terms are always so large. Sure, you'd get some branded ones in, but like, collagen is probably just as equal as Vital Proteins collagen nowadays in terms of search volume. So all these massive brands are building that demand, and I think that's the biggest change that sellers need to make. Is they can't just capture it anymore. They have to build it off platform, develop about 15 to 30 touch points, make sure that they end up going to you on Amazon to purchase it, because that's where you'll get the rank benefit, and that's where you still will be able to acquire all the existing traffic. But,
so if we try to simplify all of that down to one sentence, which is impossible, but what I got from that in general is use TikTok as a marketing platform, but still facilitate your sales from Amazon. That's kind of the playbook for with at least.
And give the consumer the choice of where to buy. But you're 100% right. Just talk about the product as much as you can, and subliminally tell the customer that it's on Amazon. So like I've seen a lot of TikTok videos of people mentioning product, talking about the product, and then maybe saying the search term out loud, or maybe showing on Amazon very briefly what is in their search bar. And it might say like Zesty Paws calming for dogs. And then that makes that person, because they just want to get there as fast as possible, that makes that person search that search term. And then once your branded search increases, you're just in a lot better shape. I mean, you have a higher conversion rate. You have people just coming into the brand, and a lot better retention rate from that. And you also get a lot of word of mouth from it, because people aren't just saying, hey, I needed a calming supplement and I found Zesty Paws. They're saying, hey, I noticed my dog was freaking out and I saw someone else talk about how this fixed their dog. So it turns out this brand Zesty Paws is the best one to get. And, now they've kind of built more of a narrative in their head behind it. It builds a deeper impact to their purchase decision. But so I mean, to dumb it down, make videos on TikTok, say you're available on Amazon. Most of your traffic will end up buying on Amazon.
It's so interesting that you can just say the search terms within the video, though, and people will find it that way. I mean,
or if you just
have subliminal
search bar. Yeah, I've seen that too, and it really works.
Okay. This is not really related to Zesty Paws, but I want to throw this out anyway. Obviously, in the human supplements market, creatine has become really popular, and now everybody's started to get onto other things as well, taking taurine and pre-workout, and that's become more ubiquitous. There's been a bit of a larger market trend behind people becoming more health-focused in general, from a human perspective. So, as I say, going off topic, but what supplement stack should dogs be taking? And is it specific to specific breeds, or do they all kind of need the same stuff?
Yeah, good question. It's definitely specific to specific breeds. There's general things that apply to all dogs, but what we found is if we use certain images of specific dog breeds and our, mobility cues, for example, because, that's something that, most dog owners experience is when the dog gets older, especially, with hip problems. Like, for example, my brother has a German Shepherd, nicest, sweetest dogs ever, but he, he's getting a little old, and his back hip, like he walks a little bit funny. So choosing dogs that are a little bit more susceptible to that, that will build an emotional impact to the consumer. They can kind of put themselves in that their shoes, and so it definitely does matter the brand. Now, you don't want to try to fear monger or anything like that, like say, hey, your dog's going to get issues, but like rather than just show a small dog with hip problems, show a big dog, because that's usually where it happens. In terms of like general supplements your dog should take, I mean, it also depends on just your dog. Like, is he allergy prone? That really has nothing to do with breed that often. For like calming and stuff like that, it's kind of natural to use a Chihuahua in the marketing, just because people assimilate that kind of loud bark and running around and everything like that. I think in terms of general supplements, I mean, probiotic is a huge one. Zesty Paws is actually making some big moves here pretty soon in the probiotic space, but and trying to innovate and develop a product that is different from the rest, because right now all probiotics for dogs come from a human microbiome. So most people don't really know where probiotics come from, but they typically come from like one person who had a very unique gut, and they have basically developed it from that original microbiome. So gut health, I mean, that's an issue pretty much every dog owner deals with once or twice, is, having, solid poops. And then, you can get into, some of the 1KCs like flea and tick, prevention, multivitamins. That's always good just to keep your dog healthy if, your food doesn't have, the supplementation that you think it needs. So, there's a lot that goes into it. I wouldn't say, you need to, because I mean, they're dogs. They've lived a long time with, humans. Just, there was no dog supplements that long ago. So, I'd say pick your battles and choose what's actually, would make a difference in your dog's attitude and what would make him feel better. Other than that, I mean, you can go with some general best practices with, multivitamins, but I wouldn't just give him a full stack. I would really cater it just like your doctor would cater to you. They wouldn't give you stuff, a vitamin C supplement, unless you needed it. If you're, drinking plenty of orange juice and stuff like that, you don't need it. So it depends. There's a lot that goes into a lot of variables.
Okay. You mentioned there that you were talking about new ways that you guys are innovating and new products that you are coming out with. So how much can you tell us about that, first things first? And I suppose my follow-up question to that would be, what trends are you watching most closely at the moment, and how is Zesty Paws preparing to lead rather than chase these trends? Because you don't want to be like the second to market if you've got something new and novel that people are going to appreciate. So
right.
What's new for the supplement space?
So I can't tell you everything. I'll give you a hint though. Like what I said earlier, it's kind of my hint is right now all probiotics for dogs come from humans.
Okay.
So that's what
read between the lines there, listeners.
Stay there. And in terms of like creating just new innovations across the board is, it is very tricky for a brand like Zesty Paws, because like you said, we want to innovate. We don't want to launch the same formula as someone else. I've done that plenty on Amazon where, we, like an aggregator might own two brands that are, both supplement brands, and they end up getting their MOQ down by ordering a bunch of product and then putting two labels on it and selling it as two different products for two different prices. That's not what we want to do at all. But the thing that makes it very hard is while we are making our products more efficacious and we can prove with, science and studies and clinical studies that our products are better, we, being such a big brand, you're under a microscope, so you can't make the claims that the other brands make. So, for example, I can see if a brand is lying about their claim and maybe ours is better, but all I can say, like what I can put on Amazon is that, let's say we cover a square footage of 800 square feet, and the competitor is saying that they do 1,200. But in reality, when you do the science and math behind it, they're only covering 200. But on Amazon, to a consumer, it still looks like that's a better product, because it just has claims that we can't make because we'll end up getting sued. So, and this could be a China brand that just launched and could be half the price. So to a consumer, it's like, well, this one says it works better, and this one says it's half the price. Why would I not pick that one? That's where you have to stand out. That's where you have to make the difference, and not your claims. But like I said, in your UGC, in your customer testimonials, you basically have to have that purchase decision become, this one's cheaper, this one says it works, but all these people are saying this one's really the one that's
Yeah. That's where those testimonials really come into play.
100%. And Amazon just recently launched shoppable collections, which is basically a replacement for the brand story. It's real estate that lives above the A+ content, below the main APIs, and you can actually put auto-playing videos in that section now. So that's and they have sound on them too. So that's a really, really good area to put, UGC and also even cross-sell products to show like they're already on the listing for one product, use that real estate to start showing another product, and have some videos to show like, dogs are really liking it. Dogs aren't spitting it out, and they're eating it and stuff like that.
Okay. So when you were talking about like the efficacy of it and how some other brands can like just claim stuff that might be wild, but they're getting away with it. Is there any way that like a consumer can check where a product has come from on Amazon? Or is there any way that they can really validate these claims at all? Or is it just based purely on these testimonials?
For a buyer on Amazon, it's not the most natural thing to go out and find. Like me, I with all the tools that we have at our disposal, I can see on the search page if what country of origin that seller is from. You can't always see where the product is actually from because there is a section to fill that out, and nowadays in the US, it's getting very complicated about what is USA made and what isn't, because most supplements on Amazon are made in the US, at least from the US sellers. And now the ingredients behind them are often sourced elsewhere. So there's still kind of a gray area on, and it seems to be changing on what is USA made and what isn't. Most people, put the claim front and center, and most of those people are also probably going to have to end up removing the claim in the future, because they're basically saying that the US is trying to move more into a state where a certain percentage of the ingredients and raw items of the formula have to be derived from the US to state that name. So I really think it's going to go back to the videos. Like, if you have a brand that's half the price and you're like, I don't know where this is coming from, but then you go to Zesty Paws and you see, a video of bottles on the manufacturing line and somebody, putting the bottles together, that kind of does it right there.
Yeah.
You really have to leverage your real estate and tell the story like, hey, here's how it went.
So let's take a zoom out from Zesty Paws for a second now, because I know you've obviously got a really interesting story that's behind it, and you've got your own things going on. What can you tell us about what else you're working on as well?
So I'm always trying to start new brands, help fellow entrepreneurs, help mom and pops of Amazon to find the really good products and help develop them for other people. I believe that because of the growth of Amazon, it's kind of, created a lot of barriers to entry for a lot of people that have really good product ideas, but don't necessarily have the budget or the, Amazon guru know how to list it. So, I try to help those sellers out. I always try to, launch my own brands and innovate in the market with branding, with formulas, with everything that I can. And it's always been, my dream to, launch something from scratch and put it in like Walmart, and see it every time I go to the store and stuff like that. So
yeah,
that's what I really like doing. And whether it's an idea I had or whether it's an idea other people had, I mean, I can start brands, pretty easily. I mean, one of the first brands I started myself was when I noticed Ukraine and Russia getting into a war. I launched an iodide supplement to protect from nuclear radiation. It was a crazy idea. Who would buy something like that? We're not getting nuked anytime soon. I actually pitched it to my boss at the time when I was living in California. He said I was crazy. He said, it's a fad. It's going to end. I was crazy, but I was just paying attention to the data. So, spend extra time in Helium 10 to see what keywords are taking off that you didn't expect to. And, we didn't expect that brand to do well. And it's not something that,
Nor would I. You just saying that now. Yeah, it does. It sounds crazy. But also, if people are searching for it, people will buy it. And, we've all seen documentaries on TV or on YouTube of like doomsday preppers and how they've had cans of beans in the garage for like years on end. And, yeah, exactly. So
I think, yeah, every time there's a media cycle, sales blow up, and otherwise sales are pretty low. But, it's a brand that we did not, intend on doing six figures, and we're consistently hitting over six figures a year. So, and then when you build, a product that has that demand and you're early to it, you don't have that competition that you normally have. Like if you're launching a new supplement today that's in a suit, like launching a turmeric today would be, really expensive and really, really hard. But launching a product like the one I did is, it's one of those things where once you kind of turn on and because of the fact of it's not super scalable, I can't run ads for it when, people aren't going in the news and saying nuclear. But, so sales jump from, we'll 70x our normal days on like high media events and stuff like that. So the hardest part there is just cash flow. The marketing is already done. The SEO takes care of everything. The Amazon algorithm takes care of everything. So at that point, it's just about managing your cash flow, which is very hard, and your inventory. But if you can manage both of those and stay in stock, then you're just ready in there for when the demand comes. And
I bet the demand's coming right now. You must be absolutely printing cash at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it right now, it's just so quick. So like as soon as someone says something in the news, sales will skyrocket, and then it'll die down for a couple of days. And then if someone says something again, so yeah, right now we're definitely maintaining our inventory levels and placing some POs.
Fair enough. Well, it actually segues really neatly along to what I always like to finish this podcast on. So we always finish with the same last question, and that last question is: if you had to start from flat zero today, like no cash, no resources whatsoever, and you had to build a brand by this weekend and launch it, what would be the first thing that you would do?
All right, so I'll try to keep this as short as possible because I could talk all day about this. First thing I do is you got to get an LLC. You got to get a credit card that, get a 0 APR credit card that has a basically no interest for, 1 or 2 years, 24 months. You can get those pretty easily. You can get about, 50 grand in those. I definitely don't recommend drop shipping. I always recommend developing your own product, then work with a domestic manufacturer, create something, that is guided off of data, no matter how crazy it is. Pay attention to search term data, pay attention to competition, pay attention to their reviews, look at the negative reviews, see what you can fix in the other products about yours to mitigate against those 1 stars. And then, you've kind of got that credit card, but, you're going to have to pay that back within 2 years. And more than likely, your first PO might not pay for the second PO, so you might have to dip back in. So what I would typically do is try to go very organic at the launch. You're going to have some ad spend behind it, but it can be low just to kind of trigger the algorithm and get your SEO going. What I would really do is focus on TikTok, and while I'm manufacturing the product, I would probably try to develop a cheaper sample version built for influencers, and basically make my commissions to the point of where I'm just breaking even for the first, just to build that traction, just to get a few people in there initially. Once you have some sales and some people have made some commission, that'll introduce other people to it as well. But yeah, kind of just leveraging UGC and traffic and as much, video content as you possibly can. Then that can start feeding into itself, and then you can start, using that additional income to pump your ads and everything like that. But you're going to have to create a product that does well with reviews, and that's also fun enough to talk about and share and sell for commission affiliates. But leverage everyone thinks it's impossible, but just leverage the resources that you have available. I mean, I didn't go to college. I didn't do anything like that. So, I was in that state where, I zero to to where I am now, and reach out for help. Ask investors. Give them a product that is a no-brainer. Give them something that makes sense, that will make them money, and don't be afraid to ask for help. You'd be surprised what you can get off the ground in a pretty short amount of time.
What an answer. All right, man. Well, let's wrap it up there. But before we do, where can people find you, and what should they be asking you about?
Yeah, man, I don't really have any plugs or anything like that, but find me on LinkedIn, Pat F O'Neill, because there's a lot of Pat O'Neills out there. So just use
a very common name.
Yeah. Well, they use the middle initial, and I'm just always, I just like talking shop, and like I said, I like building my network in this industry, and I also like staying attached to the information pipeline. So anyone that has questions or wants to partner, open to that. Otherwise, just keep a lookout, and I'll try keep doing my best and try to elevate other sellers like they've elevated me.
Well, let's wrap it up there. But hey, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on, and thank you so much for your time. So that's it, ladies and gents. Thank you, Patrick.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Lewis. Bye.